Let's bring in Wall Street Journal editorial page assistant editor and Fox News contributor, James Freeman. James, you know, people have short memories. The inflation rate under Joe Biden was pretty significant for 4 years. And now it sounds like people are blaming the Trump administration for the high cost of living.
Yeah, I certainly understand that if the president is frustrated that he feels that this was a problem largely created on his predecessor's watch, and now Democrats who contributed to that problem are trying to pin it on him. But remember, he was elected to solve this problem.
Sure.
And so it's not going to do any good to whine about Biden and all of his mistakes, and there were many of them. I do think that while it's clear, you look at the polling, you look at the voting results from this year, from 2024, voters hate inflation. I do think the president has set the table for a lot of positive programs or policies, I should say, to reduce that inflation. You think about the One Big Beautiful Bill. You think about the deregulation. He's basically shut down the new rulemaking factory in Washington. So these are all things that allow Americans to produce more goods. And we think about inflation being too many dollars chasing too many goods or too few goods. This is how you produce more goods. So I think if he sticks with that program, reducing the size of government, he should have a lot of success next year in terms of inflation and the polling.
Jamie Dimon obviously keeps a close eye on the American economy. He's the head of one of the nation's biggest banks, J.P. Morgan Chase. And he says the way he sees it, things are actually doing all right now. Listen.
In the short run, it looks like the American consumer is doing fine, is chugging along, companies are making profits, stock markets are high, and that could easily continue. There are a little small negatives, you know, like jobs are weakening, but just a little bit. Inflation is there and maybe not going down.
And that's the problem with inflation and prices. It's easy to make prices go up if you make some economic mistakes. It's really tough to make prices go down, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the answer from voters and consumers is clear, though, that even though today's roughly 3% inflation is a lot lower than it was in that summer of 2022 with Joe Biden, where it was going over 9%, we want zero. We want stable prices. People don't want their hard-earned dollars to decline slowly. They want them to hold their value. So I think to Dimon's point, this is a pretty good economy. It was actually shrinking in the first quarter when President Trump took office. Strong rebound in the second. Looks like when we finally get the number after the shutdown delay, it will be a strong number in the third quarter of this year. So a pretty good job market still, good economy that's growing. And the key to killing that inflation beast is a productive economy. We're on the way there. And also a hard money policy at the Fed. And this is where I think one thing the president wants to rethink. He's often demanding lower interest rates. I think he might want to urge them to relax and not ease up on the money supply to allow us to get to that. I think zero inflation is what people really want, not the 2% that a lot of people in Washington seem to think is beneficial.
Let's talk about health care for a moment, because health care expense is a big driver of, you know, the American economy and people's budgeting problems. Republicans seem divided over the concept of whether to try to scrap Obamacare altogether or just kind of tinker with it and see if it can be fixed. Here's a sample.
I don't think we have a choice, because if we stay on the Obamacare path, we will bankrupt the country.
It's not going away anytime soon. I think there are some parts of the Obamacare policies that are positive.
We can't be tinkering around the edges here. Like, if we tinker, we're really not going to fix this problem.
I don't know that you can completely remove it. We have to have stability and certainty in the market.
The question is, can you pass it? 60 votes in the Senate. Not going to happen. It's just not realistic. So let's talk about things we can pass.
60 votes in the Senate, referring obviously to the fact that the Senate is pretty evenly divided, and there are a lot of Democrats who just aren't going to go along with any major changes to Obamacare. What do you think is the best prospect from your perspective, James?
Yeah, I think it's ideally you would dismantle it both in terms of an inflation fighting effort and to give patients more choice. It really is amazing, given all the expense of Obamacare, that it has not improved health outcomes in the United States. And I think this was maybe you could say a political triumph of the Obama team, is that they got people to change the objective. They defined success as how many people can we get covered in a government program, as opposed to how good is their health, or how much money are we getting for our healthcare dollars. So if it can't be dismantled, I think a great first step, and I would urge him to put it in his speech this week, I think the president should talk about ways to allow people to escape Obamacare. He had a great one in the first term. He should urge Congress to codify it, let people go into short-term plans without all the Obamacare rules, pay less for insurance, and you'd see a family budget impact right away if you start liberating people from this costly regulatory regime.
James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal. James, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.